I never had a sore throat, I never had a fever, I never got tired, I never had aches and pains. Basically, I had a little bit of nasal congestion and I had some loose stomach at the beginning. And that was about it. Hello, I'm Dr. Karen with Illuminating Health. And today I want to share with you how my family got through a recent COVID infection with mild symptoms for every member of the family who got infected. And the people who got infected included myself, 3 kids, and a grandma in her 70s. And I want to preface this by saying that we're not genetically predisposed to mild viral infections. Traditionally, for most of my life, when I got a cold, it was 2 weeks of symptoms, one of those weeks being pretty miserable, followed by miserable coughs at night and during the day. My kids used to get sick for 2 to 3 weeks, including the coughs at night, and you just feel so frustrated, you don't know what to do about it. So I started experimenting with herbal treatments, and I did find that the traditional cough remedy of soaking raw onions in honey and then giving the kids a liquid from that did help with the awful nighttime coughing. But we still had coughing going on, and we still had these running noses that would last for 2 or 3 weeks. But a year or 2 ago, I finally got my act together and figured out how to treat viruses, or at least respiratory viruses, in time for COVID. So that was really exciting. So happy that happened, and I want to share with you today what we did. So there were 3 main parts to our approach, and this was preparation, supplementation, and the Wim Hof technique combined with traditional hydrotherapy, which was incredibly powerful. So the preparation actually started over the summer because I knew there was going to be a viral surge this winter, and I'm expecting more viral surges to come. So one of the first things we did was pay attention to our light exposure. So we have lots of videos on this channel talking about the importance of light in the morning, low light at night, and going out at midday for your vitamin D, as much full body exposure as you can get. So during the summer, we were getting everybody outside 15-20 minutes or more, and Grandma just showed her arms and a little bit of her tummy, but she managed to get a vitamin D level of 35 by the end of the summer with no supplementation, eating fish maybe once a week. Basically just going out 15-20 minutes a day, showing her arms and her stomach, did great for her vitamin D. And we know that vitamin D is really important for COVID, but we also know that getting vitamin D specifically from sunshine instead of supplements is really important. And in the show notes, I'll link our longer video explaining why that's the case. And in the show notes, I'll also link our video about how to keep your blue light exposure low at night, which naturally increases your melatonin, which is something else that's been found to be very important for COVID, especially. The last part of our preparation was making sure that people got exercise every day. We walked the dog every morning. That way we're able to combine our exercise and our morning light exposure. And we also eat healthy. So that involves me doing a lot of cooking from scratch, whole foods, organic, and a lot of fermentation. So a lot of sourdough and homemade yogurts. And I also want to mention that we pay a lot of attention to circadian rhythm, which basically means going to bed at the same time every night and getting up at the same time every morning. So now I want to move on to supplementation. So some of the supplementation that we did was actually foods that we were eating before we got COVID in preparation for potentially becoming ill. And we got sick near the end of the Omicron wave in early February after my son brought the virus home from middle school. So what we were doing before we got sick was eating a lot of lemon. Now the importance of lemon is that it actually has a beneficial influence on your gut bacteria. And this is important because gut bacteria is part of the immune system, but also because the COVID virus can actually act as a bacteriophage, meaning that can actually infect the bacteria in your stomach. So you want a mix of bacteria that is not going to be so susceptible to that infection. And eating lemon helps with that. Now, the peel and skin of the lemon and the kind of those little membranes that happen between the lemon slices, that's also very important. So when I was doing the lemon and my mom, I was actually peeling it and eating it like an orange so that I got that membranous stuff with the lemon. Now, my kids were not so keen on this, so they got lemon juice instead, and they got a little more sick than we did. So if you can handle it, I recommend peeling these and eating these like orange. And I did a half of this a day before COVID, and then during the COVID infection and afterwards. I'm still doing some. Something else that we did a lot beforehand was drink pine needle tea. So these are pine needles that I harvested locally from public trees, and this is from Canary Island pine. And Canary Island pine is one of the few edible pine trees that grows in Southern California. So I'll link to a website on how to identify this, and you just chop up the needles and put it in your teapot with hot water, let it sit for 20 minutes, and you're good to go. And finally, we used gur onion. So this is gur or jaggery. This is made in India, and it's sugar, but it's the whole sugar cane. It's boiled down and made into these blocks, and then you take the blocks out and you grate them over the food. And the food that we were grating it over was raw onion. And I actually learned about this just a couple days before we got sick. So we just started this a couple days early and then used it through the infection. So the problem is that kids may not want to eat very much raw onion. So have as much as your kids will handle. Now what this does is this prevents platelet aggregation, which can be a problem in COVID. And it also generally upregulates the immune system, and it provides lots of trace and non-trace minerals that help your body to function well. So this is traditionally, the raw onion and the jaggery or gur, this is traditionally used as a treatment for dengue fever, which can also affect your platelets. Now, interestingly, people who have had dengue are resistant to severe COVID infection. And in fact, the antibodies to dengue can test a false positive test as antibodies to COVID. So there seems to be some kind of cross-reactivity between dengue and COVID, and you can actually treat them with the same medicine. So you're just going to cut the onion into very small pieces, and then you're going to grate the gur over it and mix it together. Now, when your kids totally revolt about the raw onion, they do sell these other onions in the store, which are non-tier onions, and they do not have the sharp taste. So this is a lot easier for kids to eat. Now, are they as effective? We only switched to this in the middle of our infection after we'd eaten a lot of regular onion. Now, what is missing from this is an enzyme, which makes the tears from the onion when you cut the onion. The active ingredient, which affects the platelets in the blood, is not missing. So this might be fine, but I don't know. I mean, that enzyme is missing. So I would use as much regular onion as you can, and then when you have a family revolt on your hands, you could switch to this. So we also use some traditional supplementation. So this one is black seed oil. It's something that people have been using a lot for COVID. We started taking this as soon as my son got the first symptoms, and we suspected that something was going on. I used some magnesium, which has been suggested as being helpful, kind of when I felt the magnesium was needed. Used a lot of this. This is L-glutamine. Basically, this is highly concentrated chicken soup, I'll put it that way. It's a protein that supports stomach integrity. A lot of times when people get very sick from COVID, what's happening is that a large amount of virus, which has colonized the gut, or grown a lot in the gut, is leaking into the bloodstream. And so the virus and the virus spike is leaking into the bloodstream, causing trouble. So you do not want the virus leaking into your bloodstream, obviously. And the L-glutamine helps keep your stomach strong to prevent that. Okay. And then at the end of infection for my mom, we used a little echinacea to try to help with some lingering symptoms. And we also used L-lysine, which has been shown to help combat the virus. Now, on top of that, my mom in her 70s, she wanted to go more the supplement route than the Wim Hof route. She wasn't really keen to using a bunch of ice like I did. So she also took ivermectin, and also because she's in her 70s, she took ivermectin as soon as we realized that my son was sick. And she ended up taking 4 doses of that. And she also took this immune defense pack, which is a bunch of vitamins and stuff that she got from her doctor. So those were 2 things that she did, which no one else did, but that did seem to support her a lot. So the last thing that we did, and this is mostly something that I did with a little bit for the kids and not so much for my mom, but the Wim Hof method. And I discovered this over the summer, and he had done a video that his method was the key to COVID, that was really good for your immune system. So like, okay, I'll give it a try. It had a lot of good reviews. So I'm going to link that as well. It did turn out to work really, really well. So basically the method involves cold showers every morning or alternating cold and hot showers, and a special deep breathing technique that's also really helpful for stress release. And you can also do yoga and some other things that I'll show you. And it turned out it really helped. Now, the other thing I did in addition to that is at nighttime. So I'm doing cold showers in the morning, and I was doing that every day. So I was doing that before I got sick. So that caught things at the beginning, which I think is really important to already have this stuff going. So when you have the virus in your system, even if you don't know you're sick yet, that it's going to be helpful. And then at night, I would do more traditional hydrotherapy. Now, the hydrotherapy has been used to support the immune system for a really long time, for thousands of years probably. And the form that I did involved foot baths. So I'd have 2 foot baths, one with really hot water, so probably like 104 degrees, like not that you're going to burn yourself, but that definitely feels hot when you put your feet in, and then one with ice water. And what you do is you put your feet in the hot water for 3 minutes and the ice water for 1 minute. And you go back and forth 3 times. Simple, but amazingly effective. It clears the congestion. It prevented me from ever getting a sore throat, ever getting a fever. And I noticed this earlier in the year when I used the same method to treat a cold that my son brought home from school. He had the full sore throat, everything. He wasn't doing hydrotherapy. I never got a sore throat. I was done with it in 3 days, where it used to take me 2 weeks. So this is amazingly effective. And it turns out that kind of shocking the body, going from hot to cold like this, it upregulates something called interferon, which is a really important part of the immune system for preventing viral entrance to the cells. And it's something that the COVID virus, partially disables in your cells, which what helps COVID to be as bad as it can be. So you want your interferon to really be as high as possible at the beginning of the infection, before COVID has a chance to disable it. So this cold water shock really helps with the interferon. It helps upregulating your immune system, and the alternating hot and cold helps to keep your immune system balanced, so you don't have one part of your immune system going crazy and causing a lot of collateral damage, which can also happen in COVID when cases get really bad. So amazingly effective. And if you're having sinus problems or congestion, you can add hydrotherapy for the face by just taking a washcloth and you dip that in your hot and your cold water. So you have one hot washcloth and one cold one. And while your feet are in the hot water, you're going to put on the hot washcloth. Your feet are in the cold water, you're going to put on the cold washcloth. And the congestion will go away. So I do this at bedtime, and then I'm congestion free all night long. So really amazing. And then the last really important thing while you have COVID is keeping the fear down. COVID really, really feeds on fear. And with everything that we've been through in the last 2 years, when you have your positive COVID test, it's really hard not to have that fear. But the Wim Hof method, again, really helped with that. And let me show you how. Okay, so part of the Wim Hof method, if you go through his online classes, is holding your hand in ice water. So I have the ice here, our secret ingredient. And I'm going to pour some water in here. So you're going to stick your hand in there. For the method, you're going to do this for 2 minutes for each hand. And yeah, I have a lot of ice here, so your hand starts to hurt pretty soon. And when you practice this every day, you realize that if you don't want that pain, you need to really relax your hand. You need to relax against the pain and kind of disconnect from it. And having your hand in a lot of ice, really good practice for how to relax against something that you don't want affecting you, even though it's still a lot of work. So when you have COVID and you have that fear and you practice beforehand or during COVID, putting your hand in the ice water and practice, how do I breathe? How do I relax so that I don't have the pain? And then when you have the fear with COVID, use that same method. Just relax against it. Don't tense up with it. Just let it be like an object. Treat fear as an object and you're just relaxing against it, just the same way you're going to relax against the pain with your hand in ice. So at the end of the day, what were our symptoms? We all had COVID virus probably for at least 10 days. That's about as long as some of us tested positive for, although at the end of that time it was very, very low. We all had positive home tests, positive PCR. Though I never had a sore throat, I never had a fever, I never got tired, I never had aches and pains. Basically, I had a little bit of nasal congestion and I had some loose stomach at the beginning. And that was about it. And so I knew I had the virus, but I was able to function and fully take care of my family and cook for my family and do what I needed to do. And I tried not to overdo it and do anything extra because I really didn't want to push it. I knew I had COVID, but I was able to do what I needed to do. I was able to sleep well every night. It was amazing. And I should say that I did do Wim Hof breathing right before I went to bed, as well as doing it every morning. Now my kids, the first kid who got it, we didn't really realize when he had it first. He had more symptoms over 5 or 6 days, and he was only doing the supplements and the food. He never did any hydrotherapy. So he did get some back pain and some diarrhea and some malaise. Not bad. He got some, but again, not bad. He was doing the foods and the supplements. My other 2 kids also doing foods and supplements, but they ended up getting fever and appetite loss. So as soon as that happened, I made them do the hydrotherapy before everybody was like, no, we don't want to stick our feet in ice water, right? But once they got the fever, they agreed. So the kids did it for 1 day, twice a day, morning and night. And within 36 hours, fever, appetite loss, everything was completely cleared up. They didn't have, maybe they had slight residual congestion for a day or 2, then that was gone. There was no coughs. It was awesome. They were completely good. My mom, who did the ivermectin and the supplements, did not do the hydrotherapy. She ended up being symptomatic for like half a day as far as having fever and loss of appetite and headache. It was not bad, but she noticed something for like half a day. And then after that, she had congestion. And again, later on in the disease, she had loose stomach, whereas the rest of us had that earlier. But she was able to fully function afterwards. And she actually found that 3 weeks after being ill, when she got back to her regular exercise routine, that helped to settle her stomach, because she had a little bit of lingering stomach issues after getting better. But she, really, she's in her 70s, and she only had basically half a day of not feeling well. And then I did have an odd episode 2.5 weeks after initially getting ill. So this is after my COVID tests were negative. It felt like everything had cleared up. And then what I did is I ate some chicory, raw chicory, out of my garden. Chicory is a red Italian dandelion. It's in the dandelion family. People use it to detox from COVID. And so I just picked up like 1.5 leaves, kind of large leaves, and ate those. And a couple hours later, I ended up throwing that up for several hours. So that was my getting sick for a couple hours, and I don't know what happened. I don't know whether COVID gave me a reactivity to dandelion, or it's because the dandelion is supposed to bind COVID's spike. Maybe a whole bunch of spike just detoxed into my stomach at once. I don't know. I did have that episode. I was fine before. I've been fine since. So overall, pretty good. We're now 4 weeks out, and everyone is in great shape. So thank you so much for watching today. And I just want to reiterate some of our main points: preparation, supplementation, and hydrotherapy, and the Wim Hof method. Again, the lemon and the gur onion I think were very important. The vitamin D preparation, the sun exposure, and the low lights at night I think really helped. And finally, the hydrotherapy, just alternating your feet between hot and cold water and using the Wim Hof method. But even if you don't use Wim Hof, doing the hot and cold alteration I think was remarkably effective. So I hope this might be helpful to you if you haven't had COVID yet, or if you want to get ready for having COVID again next year, or whatever new virus is going to be on the scene. Please keep this in mind. Thank you so much for watching today.